We're back to Authors Corner in the Total Education Network. Again, TotalTutor.net for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley. Facebook, LinkedIn, Neil Haley. Instagram, Total Tutor. And I'm going to call this Authors Corner the March Madness Authors Corner. And I had Kenny Sailors on later today. I had him on today, so it's just like it's a perfect thing. NCAA basketball, talking about specific things. And I'm sure Ken knows who he was as well. And so I'm so excited to welcome the program author Ken Davis, author of many different books, especially the Kansas book I had you on before. But we were going to talk about just the Final Four, but no, we're going to talk about Connecticut basketball. And I was really excited about that whole thing, and it was great to see an old Big East team in the Final Four. How are you, Ken?
Doing great, Neil. Thanks. Yeah, it was an incredible weekend down in New York, and the UConn fans really responded as you know, as soon as they beat Villanova in Buffalo, the word was out that, you know, they were going to get to the Garden. And, I mean, you could see that in the bracket, but, they kind of got away with one and against St. Joseph's in the first round. They had to tie the game and send it in overtime in the final minute. It could have been out in the first round. Then they played really well against Villanova, and I tell you what, Kevin Ollie and his staff have come up with some masterful game plans. I saw Iowa State a lot on TV, and I saw them in person once out of Kansas this year, and they're a really good team. Of course, they didn't have Niang, but they played so well against Iowa State, and then Michigan State seemed to be a bad matchup for UConn, and it ended up not being. I mean, they were down when they were down by 9. I was worried about UConn. I didn't know if they could pull that off, but they were able to keep the inside game non-factor for Michigan State, and that just allowed Shabazz Napier. As soon as he hit that three-pointer to start that 12-0 run, I mean, we didn't know it was 12-0 run, but runs usually start with a Shabazz Napier basket, and you knew it was coming at that time, and just a good redemption kind of game for them after everything that's happened in the last couple of years.
Exactly, and that's, again, where I want to have you back on and talk Connecticut basketball history, because I remember the days of just Cliff Robinson, and then they had a shocker when they beat Syracuse in Connecticut, and then a couple years later, that's when Connecticut's run came, and I was a huge fan of Connecticut till Pitt got good enough to beat Connecticut. Then that kind of changed my whole take on the Huskies, but I love the days of just the great teams of Connecticut, and again how they finally took Georgetown and Syracuse off of the top of the Big East and became the kings of the Big East. And I just think it was just a perfect way to kind of put a stamp on Madison Square Garden and the Big East by Connecticut representing in the Final Four and kind of messing up the Big Ten's hope of really become a super conference like the Big East. It could have been 3 teams, and everything didn't go to break that record. So I'm sure you're happy about that as well.
Well, things have not worked out real well for UConn in the realignment shuffle, and we just still don't know, if they're going to end up in some other place. But now, obviously, they've done well by the American. I mean, the Associated Press All-American team came out, and there's 3 guys from the American conferences: Shabazz Napier, Russ Smith, and Kilpatrick from Cincinnati are on the first team All-American. So the American had a very good first season. It's not the old Big East, though. And you mentioned Cliff Robinson. UConn won that 1988 NIT with Cliff in Calhoun's second season. And, you got to credit Jim Calhoun for everything you were just talking about. I came here in Connecticut in 1985. It was Don Perno's last season. And Jim came in from Northeastern and changed everything, the whole culture of the program around. And they want that NIT in 1988 in Madison Square Garden was kind of the liftoff point. Then, as you mentioned, 2 years later, they had those back-to-back wins against Syracuse and Georgetown that propelled them to their first Big East championship of 7 in the Garden in 1990. And, just went on from there. Talik Brown, Ray Allen, Ben Gordon, all these big shots, Kimball Walker that have been part of the Big East history and the Madison Square Garden history. So, yeah, I mean, it's as they said repeatedly over the weekend, Madison Square Garden is kind of their third home because they have Gamble and they have the XL Center in Hartford, obviously, that they split their regular season games. But it was an amazing crowd. It was very loud in there. And in 1990, when they did make that first NCAA appearance under Calhoun, they had that was the point where they could the rules allowed them to play in Hartford. They played their first 2 games in Hartford, and there was, that has been done away with because everybody thought that was such a home court advantage. Well, I think it was an even bigger home court advantage in New York, the way that fans came down the trains and took that place over yesterday. I think it was about 70% UConn fans yesterday.
It completely reminded me of the Big East Championship game. You know how every team had their tickets, and then they scalped them all when they lost. And I'm sure all the Iowa State, because I would go to many Big East tournaments, and never was there when Pitt won them. I was there in the 80s, and I also was there in the 90s when Connecticut was making their resurgence. Pitt was okay. Pitt lost in certain games, but I always have been a fan of UConn till, again, Pitt and UConn became big rivals. I mean, I miss those days, and I'm glad we're talking and reminiscing about things, but we want to really get into the whole Final Four thing because I'm rooting for Connecticut, and because the other teams are just all superpowers. They all get the major players, and you're right. Connecticut's gotten not the fairest shake, but I don't even know what happened. Calhoun retired because of health problems, left because of health problems. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, he had the bicycle injury and he injured his hip, and it was a combination of that, and I think he just felt it was kind of time. He's feeling much better now, and obviously there's been some talk about him if he would listen. I think the talk about Boston College was a little carried away by some media members, but he that was the basic thing, and he was pushing for Kevin Ollie. And they wouldn't give him that coach in waiting status at the university, sort of like Mike Hopkins has at Syracuse, which is probably going to end up not being worth anything anyway if he goes to Boston College. But because Boeheim's made him wait so long. But some people said, well, he did it just to force UConn's hand to get it into Kevin's hands. Kevin's proved that he was worth it. He's won 50 games in 2 seasons. He's got these kids playing hard, playing, for him, playing for the school, and the ones that stayed through all the APR issues, the loyalty issue. Kevin's really played up, and it's an amazing thing to watch it. They won it in 2011. Shabazz Napier, Tyler Rolander, and Niels Gafai were on that team. Now they're back in the Final Four, those 3 guys, and that came with a season of bad chemistry in their sophomore years, and then a loss to Iowa State in the first round, and that was followed by the postseason ban last year. So these guys have been through a lot. I think that's why you've got to be happy for them. The UConn name was kind of being dragged down after all that Jim had, accomplished, and this brings them back under another coach. And you know how hard that is. We've watched other schools. From UCLA times when Wooden left to John Thompson leaving Georgetown, it's really hard for that next person to get the job done, and Kevin's done it. And
it looks like he's a player's coach, for sure, and you could just see it from the excitement of his players. And I really, go ahead.
He's like a big brother. I mean, he really is. And he's 41. He wore the UConn uniform. He gets out there on the floor. He's obviously very physically fit. And the DeAndre Daniels was joking here today that he would be playing in an old man's rec league. But hey, he's not that far removed from his NBA career, and he can get out there and he can shoot and pass and do those things. He's not a guy in his 60s or 70s. He's very he's very connected to these young guys, and they know that he played. They know he had an NBA career. They know that he learned from people like Calhoun and Larry Brown, and he's been talked up by LeBron and Kevin Durant as being valuable teammates on their NBA teams, and how much he did to establish the culture with those guys, and that's impressive to guys. They may not be in tune to Michael Jordan now that they are in tune to LeBron James and to Kevin Durant.
So before we get to your prediction, and I want to know historically, do you think that they're going to go to a different conference? Do you think if they can go ahead and really play well, possibly win the national championship, people say we got to get Connecticut in one of the major super conferences?
I don't know if that does it, because everything's so based on football, and the football program is still lagging behind here. Yeah. And And now there's a coaching change. Bob Diaco's coming in from Notre Dame, and it's about money. It's about facilities. It's about TV. It's about all that stuff. I think the Big Ten made a big mistake going with Rutgers. I mean, I don't see what Rutgers brings to the table over UConn, and I think this proved it. I mean, what is, you can't undo that. Rutgers is going to the Big Ten. It's just kind of quiet right now in the shifting of the landscape, and you don't know what the next piece will be to follow. But if it was based on basketball, it would have been UConn would have been a choice a long time ago, because here we are. The men and women in 2004 won both, and maybe they can do it again this year. Who knows? It's just that isn't what drives the bus.
Exactly. It's definitely not what drives the bus, Ken, and it's just something where you're looking and you're saying to yourself, wow. I mean, I hope for Connecticut's sake, because again, the program is a clean program. Calhoun did a tremendous job. That they don't go to obscurity, but the good news is that there are schools that are not in the power conferences that every year are very strong in the tournament. And I see them in that rank and in that opportunity, and hopefully that they can continue that process in the American Conference with Memphis and different teams. There were some good teams in there, and SMU not getting in, that was ridiculous as well. As you see, they're going to the NIT finals now. So right. It's again, they just
Louisville will be gone next year, so that's gonna knock it down a little bit. But Tulsa's coming in, but they're not the same as Louisville, even though my man Danny Manning is there. Tulsa did a great job this year, but the league will take a hit when Louisville goes out. But there's still Cincinnati, Memphis, and UConn. I don't know what the future of I don't think anybody knows what the future of this league is. And Cincinnati kind of came out. The new AD and vocally said that they're going to keep looking. UConn hasn't said that lately, but they were looking when it first hit. The Syracuse-Pittsburgh move was such a shock to everyone that it caught Connecticut at a bad time. They were changing athletic directors there, and they got hung out in no man's land. And again, Louisville, bigger facilities, better football program. I don't question Louisville going to the ACC, but I do question Rutgers and then move there to the Big Ten. I think you just can't say that Rutgers really brings the New York market. I don't believe that.
No, and Shiano is the only reason why Rutgers is good in football with those years that they were decent. So so you compare, and Connecticut, they played decent at years in football. They were competitive, and then once the split, that destroyed everything. So let's go to the prediction now for sure. I think that I see that you need to, if you're going to keep this super conference going, you have to have Georgetown with Connecticut. You need to have St. John's with Connecticut. You need to bring those two conferences back together once Louisville leaves. That will probably make it the better conference to keep basketball going. That's.
Neil, there's been so many bad feelings exchanged. I can't see that happening. I mean, it probably was the dysfunctionality of the Big East for all these years that Connecticut really didn't fit in with that group as far as the kind of school they are, because you had the so-called Catholic Seven that broke away here, and that created a lot of the problems because they don't all play football either. So UConn made this commitment to football. Sure, I would love to, like you said, I'd love to go back to those old times. I loved the Big East. I was a Midwestern guy who moved out here in '81 to cover Syracuse in Binghamton, New York, and just after the dome was built, I saw that we saw that shot of Pearl Washington running off the floor after hitting the shot against Boston College on the 30-30 thing on ESPN, and I was there for that game, and the Georgetown-Syracuse games, the UConn-Syracuse games, everything about that when Pittsburgh got strong. We'll never. I don't think we'll ever have it again. It's really sad.
No, it is sad, and it's for football. And what reasoning? Maybe basketball will be saved when football has to pay their athletes and it'll destroy the sport. We don't know. You never know about these things. So again, it's take it each day. And the good news is there are schools that do make runs that are not in the major conferences. And Connecticut is the one that got that opportunity this year. So what do you think their shot is of winning the championship?
Well, they beat Florida earlier, but Florida didn't have all their people at that time. Wilbekin got hurt in the last 3 minutes. It was it was a buzzer beater by Napier in that game, and that's the last time Florida lost was December 2nd. They won 30 straight since that game. And, it was kind of a fortunate thing. Shabazz put up a shot and didn't hit, and DeAndre Daniels was able to tap it back out to him, and he hit it at the buzzer. It was a tremendous game. I think it'll be another very good game, and it's going to be an interesting matchup between Wilbekin and Napier, and it's not really one-on-one. I'm sure they'll, much like they did against Michigan State, people will switch off and stuff. But it's going to be hard to beat Florida the way they are right now. But I don't think anybody, except the fans maybe at the Garden, thought that
Michigan State,
Yeah, I mean, I really don't. A lot of people went in there thinking that Michigan State could win by double digits, and again, game planning. So I think it'll be a very good game. I think the winner of that game could win it all, but Kentucky and Wisconsin can't be discredited. I mean, Kentucky is getting it together at the right time, obviously, with that young team, and Wisconsin I've kind of undervalued all year, and you got to appreciate what they've done. They're running offense, and Bo always has a good defensive team, so they're pretty. Obviously everybody's done what they needed to do. They had the right matchups, I guess, but Frank Kaminsky's been unreal for Wisconsin here, so that would probably create another problem for UConn, you would think, but somehow they still, without a great front line, UConn has been able to find ways to get it done. So I wouldn't count them out, and they're not going to be the favorite. Florida's still going to be the heavy favorite, I would say, from an objective standpoint. But I don't think they'll get blown out.
Okay, well, Ken, and I like I said before, it's going to be an exciting tournament. 4 powerful teams, truly. And you see the parity of the NCAAs with only 2 number 1 seeds. And you see it's all based on where you were put. And honestly, I watched Pitt, and Pitt played Florida tough for one half. And then you allow buzzer beaters to destroy you. And we talked about this before, Ken, about the power of what's Pitt going to be. And Pitt just had the wrong place, wrong time. You win these close games, Pitt, you could be talking about Pitt in the Final Four. That's the honest truth in all these certain circumstances. But okay, so Ken, where can we find information on you and your prediction? You think Connecticut's going to win it all, or not? You won't put something out there.
No, I hate to make predictions. I honestly, I mean, it like I said, I think if they can beat Florida, I think they've got a very good chance. That's, to me, that's their national championship game, and that's the way. Kevin, I don't want to sound like a coach, but I don't know what I mean. If you would have asked me Sunday morning, I would have predicted Michigan State was going to win, but there was a little bit of element of me that UConn's playing with tremendous confidence, and Shabazz Napier is just one of those leaders that you see. So, okay, if you want to make a prediction, I'm going to say UConn's going to have the big upset.
Okay, and I'll be nice, and I'll say Kentucky's going to win because my predictions are worth nothing. So, just for you, Ken. So, Ken, where can we purchase your books and learn more about you?
You can come to my website. It's KenDavisFiles.com, and there's a place there where you can buy my new Kansas book, The 100 Things Kansas Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die, with Chapter 100 on Andrew Wiggins, who was barely a Jayhawk for, well, not even for a year, because he signed last May and he's off to the NBA. And it was kind of a sad ending for Kansas this year because of Embiid being hurt, and then he may head to the NBA as well. But that's where we are in college basketball these days. Everybody knew Andrew Wiggins was going to be a one and done, but we wish him well. And you can order copies directly from me on KenDavisFiles.com. Obviously, you can go to Barnes and Noble and Amazon and Triumph Books websites as well. And that series is one of the strong series for Triumph Books, the 100 Things series. And you can even, there's my Connecticut Vault book there's a link to the Whitman Publishing site there. If people that came out in 2010, gave the entire history of Connecticut. So if there's any Connecticut fans that want to read up on the history up to 2010, you could order that through Whitman. So appreciate it, Neil. Thanks for having me on.
We're going to have you back in May to talk Big East. We're going to go into the breakdown that 30-30. All right, good talking to you, Ken, and we'll stay in touch, okay?
Okay,
all right,
Neil, take care.
Enjoy your trip to the Final Four. I wish I was there. Take care, man. Okay, see ya. All right, you're listening to Author's Corner, and we'll be back in just a moment.